So this is usually hard for most people because there's so many people who matter in forming you. And so I think very late in life, I've now got a context for really appreciating my strong, silent mother, who it took me a lot. She'd even died before I fully appreciated all that she was. She had a good helping of wit and creativity, and I think I inherit that from her, but I didn't give her credit probably fully until recently. But a person I was going to talk about who's a current hero, his name is Don Spencer, and he's a Presbyterian, trained as a Presbyterian pastor. He was when I was in college, I didn't actually know who he was, but I knew his influence because he uh, had formed a coffee house for students during the Vietnam War. And it was also, it produced theater. They wrote their own plays there. And so he has continued to work for civil rights and human rights. And he now is in the same church I'm in, and he gets me into good trouble all the time, to the kind of good trouble that John R. Lewis speaks of. And so he's been a big mentor for me in like the last 10 years or so.
Okay. So what I heard you say is that, like most of us, there are a lot of adults that were really important in our lives. And so this question is hard, and that you really have come of late to appreciate your mother, your strong, silent mother who had a terrific sense of humor. Um, and I mean, this really resonates with me. I think the older we get, the more we appreciate things about our parents that we really didn't even recognize or acknowledge. But you've come, even since her death, to recognize just the gifts that you received from her and her sense of humor and other qualities. But that here in later life, you've recently come to admire Don Spencer, a Presbyterian minister. I don't know whether he's currently a Presbyterian minister or whether he was trained as Presbyterian minister, but who had a coffee shop during the Vietnam War protests period. Created a coffee shop for youth to come, and they produce plays, and that he belongs to the church where you attend now, and he's always suggesting or getting you to get involved in good works that and that have been categorized by John Lewis as good trouble.
Yeah, that was very good.
Yeah, when I read that question last night, I sort of chuckled because I guess even my very well intentioned, even my white friends who I said I don't edit. I have white friends who I don't have to edit, anything with. I can say, how white people are, and they'll say, yes, I know how white people are. But there are so many things that I guess are just part of our culture, ethnicity. I've recently I'm venturing away from race, because we all know that race is a social construct. And with my kids, I refer to us more as we're a culture. The Black is a culture, it's an ethnicity. And they're just things that I grew up knowing that white people don't know. Like a lot of white people didn't know about John Brown and how he was, seen by Black people as, the father of abolition, of, the final end of slavery, how he put his whole heart and soul in it and sacrificed his own kids. Something that even Frederick Douglass, I think, well, Frederick Douglass would join, but I think one of his sons, Frederick Douglass' sons, was a part of the raid. But anyway, they're just things like that. Just things that come up in conversation that I'll mention, and the white friend will say, "Wow, I never knew that. I didn't know that." So it really is like in Black homes, not, and of course not all Black homes. I mean, I was brought up in a home where my parents were laborers, but they were educated. They were bright people, and so they were aware of things, and they read and they had ideas. So we were exposed. Things were talked about, and and so yeah, just so how am I putting? So it's just I just think there's a lot of things that are very ordinary or well known by Black people, just by virtue of their experience, how they grew up and who they interact with, that white people weren't privy to. I mean, I've had white friends who said they had never met a Black person until they were an adult. You know. Um,
Okay, so I heard you say that there are many things that the whole white culture just doesn't even realize, uh, and some of that being about Black history, and which is really American history, but the part that was left out is what they don't realize. And the example you gave was John Brown, who's considered the father of the abolitionist movement, and was persecuted for that. Um, and other things um, just come from so much, particularly in West Virginia, of people never having been around a Black person, maybe until they grew up and met one as an adult, since there's only like not quite 4% uh, people of color in this state, or at least the Black portion of people of color. And I'm one of those. I mean, I went through all my learning. I did know who John Brown was because we are taught West Virginia history and since he was from West Virginia, I got that in fourth grade and eighth grade, um, where they have the golden horseshoe test, So uh, people who don't know who John Brown is probably didn't do well on that test, but it was there. Um, But that's all I knew of Black people. I didn't know them personally. My freshman class and art class at West Virginia University was where I first met one. And then it was, though, right in the middle of the civil rights, well, yeah, it was past the civil rights law changes, but it was still in the Vietnam War, and we were still heavily, in equal rights speech, and that's what our assignments were about when we were in design school. So ever since then, I was in college at the time when we were starting to know that, but I didn't know it from my education growing up or my experience, and experiences where that's why we're doing these things. Experiences where you learn something, that refutes all that you thought because of stereotypes and miseducation. I think I keep continuing to grow in learning answers to this kind of question for me. But in 2011, I was teaching a design for social impact class, my senior class, and I got connected to a community outside of Morgantown, just outside of Morgantown, like half a mile from my school. Uh, that's that's a Scotts Run area that had 13 coal camp communities, but people think of it as being a Black community. It was never more than 40% Black. Osage is the center of that. and it's hardly anybody left there now. I think at one time there were 7,000 people, now it's down to 67. And so we founded a museum for them to tell their story. And what I love about being a designer is that I can give back something real. Like other university professors get a bad rap for just like researching people like they're guinea pigs and they never get anything out of it. But what they got out of it every semester, and I continued to work with them for 10 years. They would get something real and they would get a thing that could give them a voice and tell their
Mhm.
history in ways that, I mean, they were the center of integration from the 1920s, and they still are loving people that get along so famously. We tell that story all the time. And so over these 10 years, I've grown to not just be like a friend. I'm accepted in that community, and they embarrass me all the time, by
Mhm.
how close our relationship is. And the students, when I bring them in, they understand what real communities, real functioning communities are, and they're always impressed by it. They're saying, my hometown's not like that. And but just the bond that we've made, this several of these people are on our conversations because they trust me enough to know I'm not doing this in the wrong way. And one of them is 97, and she tells me that, I don't know if she's telling the truth, but she tells me that sometimes she'll give a story and she'll say, I haven't even told my family this. And so I feel
Mhm.
very, I just took her in November to um, the African American Museum, as part of the
Mhm.
Smithsonian in DC, and because she had taught Black history, at
Mhm.
some point in her life, and so that was very meaningful for both of us. So
Wow.
that's my story.
Wow. So I heard you say that you have this whole community outside of Morgantown, where
Mhm.
you are. Uh,
Whoops.
it like used to be one of the original, coal camps, and a population of 7,000 that's now down to 67. And you've helped them create a museum there, um, and that you become so close to them that it's at times embarrassing, um, and that you think part of that is that you didn't just go there and research, but you've given them something tangible over the past 10 years, and and the relationships are so close that one of them in particular will tells you things that she says she hasn't even told her family, and several of them have participated in this listening um, experiment.